Let's unpack gender and spirituality in today's episode of my Toxic Spirituality series. I grew up Roman Catholic. I went to an all-girls school run by actual nuns. Learning about the history of the Order of the Nuns and the overall history of the Catholic Church, on top of the regular education, I had the blessing to see both the good and the bad sides of gender segregation very early on. I saw how patriarchy suppresses women in every field of life, including spirituality. It has always been a question of control. But this isn't just a Catholic issue. So much of mainstream spirituality, especially New Age spirituality, reinforces the same binary thinking that serves patriarchy. The Catholic Church centralized power under male leadership, forcing women into submission. Many monotheistic religions erased or demonized spiritual roles that didn't fit neatly into male or female. And even in supposedly progressive spaces, people are told they need to balance their divine masculine and feminine. But what if you're neither? What if your energy is beyond gender or something entirely different? Many spiritual traditions have always had space for non-binary, gender-fluid, trans identities. But colonialism, religion institutions, and patriarchal structures erased or suppressed these histories. That's why I want to talk about gender-expansive spiritual traditions and how mainstream spirituality limits us, and how we can reclaim practices that break free from gendered labels. In Catholicism, nuns used to have far more authority. They ran hospitals, schools, entire religious orders with autonomy. But over time, the church centralized power under male bishops and priests, placing stricter limitations on their authority. A significant moment in this shift was the Council of Trent, 1545 to 1563, which reinforced strict enclosure laws for nuns, limiting their independence and placing them under direct supervision of male clergy. Even earlier, in 1298, Pope Bonifacius VIII issued Periculoso, a decree that mandated cloistered life for nuns, reducing their ability to engage with the outside world. This was always about control, not faith. While the First Vatican Council in 1869 to 1870 primarily addressed issues like papal infallibility and the challenges of modernity, it further solidified a centralized church structure where women were excluded from positions of doctrinal authority. This reinforced a system where women could never hold the highest positions of religious leaderships. And this pattern repeats across traditions. In many pre-Christian European spiritualities, priestesses, shamans, and gender-fluid practitioners had respected roles. As monotheistic religions spread, they enforced rigid gender roles, erasing and demonizing those who didn't fit. You see that especially in New Age spirituality. It loves to frame everything in terms of divine masculine this, divine feminine that. Feminine energy is intuitive and soft and nurturing, and a healed masculine energy is logical, strong, and protective. And we are also supposed to find balance in ourselves between those feminine and masculine energies, or even worse, in some traditions, we have to completely devote and lean into the feminine energy as a woman.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa!
That's too damn bad!
In one of my previous videos of the series on New Age spirituality, I put a card up here, We talked about how these spaces oversimplify and whitewash spiritual traditions. This gendered energy model is another example of that. It takes complex spiritual ideas and forces them into a binary framework that doesn't leave space for non-binary, trans, or gender fluid experiences. The irony is, many of the traditions that New Age spirituality borrows from never had those rigid gender roles in the first place. Many cultures have always recognized gender beyond the binary. Let's explore a few of those. This list is by no means the entire one. There are more. I just picked out a few. True Spirit in the indigenous North American cultures. Many indigenous cultures have always acknowledged True Spirit identities, where a person embodies both masculine and feminine qualities or something entirely beyond them. These individuals often held sacred roles as healers, visionaries, or spiritual leaders. In South Asia, you have the Hiya. In Hindu and Islamic traditions across South Africa, they are recognized as a third gender category with deep spiritual significance. They are often associated with blessings, fertility, and divine presence. In Norse traditions, Seyor was a magical practice associated with Odin, Freya, and gender-fluid practitioners. The practice was often seen as feminine, but Odin himself performed it, breaking rigid gender norms. In ancient Rome, you had the Galli priests. The Galli were priestesses of the goddess Cybele and were known for their gender-fluid or trans-feminine identities. They rejected traditional male roles and performed ecstatic rituals in service of the goddess. In Indonesia, the Bugis people recognize 5 genders, not only 2, but 5, including Bisu, a sacred gender-expansive role. Nepal, recognized legally as a third gender today, Kina communities have historical and spiritual significance in Hinduism, often associated with blessings and ceremonial roles. In pre-colonial Philippines, Bakla individuals who embody both masculine and feminine traits held roles as shamans called babaylan, who were spiritual leaders and teachers. Those are just a few examples to prove that the idea of strict gender binary is not universal. And thankfully, there's a growing wave of people reclaiming and reshaping spirituality in ways that make room for all identities today. There are queer-led covens, trans-centered ritual circles, and spiritual practitioners who are building frameworks that aren't based on the binary at all. Some tarot readers and astrologers are creating gender-free systems, reinterpreting cards and archetypes without the default male-female energy. For example, in my own practice, I intentionally avoid using terms like divine feminine or divine masculine. I focus on personal energy, context, and the dynamic of the situation. I use a tarot deck that replaces traditional male-coded cards with more balanced representations. For example, my favorite tarot deck, the Lumia Tarot, uses, instead of a page, the maiden. So we have, for example, a maiden of wands instead of a page of wands. This opens up new layers of meaning, and these changes help make the messages more accessible and empowering for everyone, regardless of identity. Queer pagans are blending their ancestral traditions with gender-expansive interpretations, rethinking their deities, Sabbath, and sacred roles to reflect their lived experience. And digital platforms and collectives, gender-diverse Reiki groups, non-binary priestess communities are all creating new blueprints for what inclusive spirituality can look like. This work isn't just empowering, it's necessary in my books. It's a return to something older, deeper, and more real than the binary ever allowed. And this opens up more room for authenticity, exploration, and personal connection. Spirituality should be a tool for self-discovery, not self-limitation. And when we strip away outdated gendered frameworks, we make room for something more fluid, more authentic, and more inclusive. If you are this far into the video, you might ask yourself, and what actions can I personally take to be more aware of this in my daily life? Ditch gendered language and rituals. That's the first step. Watch your own language. Instead of calling on divine masculine and feminine, try using something like creation and destruction, giving and receiving, active and receptive. There are a lot of alternatives for the gender language. You can explore non-binary deities. Many deities exist outside the gender binary, reflecting a broader and more fluid understanding of spirituality across cultures. For example, Baphomet in Western occultism, often deceived as an androgynous figure, Baphomet represents balance, unity, and the merging of opposites. A symbol of duality and transcendence, Baphomet challenged rigid gender norms. Loki. In the Norse mythology, Loki is a shape-shifting trickster who frequently defies gender roles. They transform into different genders throughout Norse myths, including a story where Loki becomes female and gives birth to a child. If you know, you know, is all I'm saying to that story. In Sumerian mythology, you have Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and transformation. She had a sacred connection to individuals who did not fit binary gender roles. Her priests, the Gala, were often gender fluid or third gender individuals. In Hinduism, in some traditions, Shiva is worshipped in the Ardhanarishvara form, a fusion of both masculine and feminine energies, visually deceived as being split into half male and half female. Chinese Buddhism, originally deceived as a male, Guanani later became known for appearing in both masculine and feminine forms, embodying the concept of fluidity and spiritual identity. And in numerous indigenous spiritual traditions, the Great Spirit is described as beyond gender, existing in a form that embodies both masculine and feminine qualities or transcends them entirely. And of course, you have the Greek god Hermaphaistos, a deity born from Hermes and Aphrodite. Hermaphaistos represents intersex identity and fluid gender expressions, symbolizing the sacred union of male and female. You have the Aztec god of art, beauty, and pleasure, Xochipilli. I butchered that pronunciation, but that god was associated with both male and female energies, as well as queerness and nonconformity in gender expression. And so was the Egyptian primordial creator god Atum, containing both masculine and feminine aspects, symbolizing self-creation and the unity of all things. These deities and many, many others demonstrate that divinity has never been limited to a strict gender binary. Across the world, gods, spirits, and sacred figures have always existed beyond traditional male-female roles, reinforcing that spirituality should embrace all identity. What else can you do? Focus on personal energy, not gendered energy. How does energy move through you? What feels authentic to your experience? And learn from the gender-expansive traditions. Seek out books, teachers, and practitioners who understand gender beyond the binary. So, what are your thoughts on gender and spirituality? Have you ever felt boxed in by the divine masculine-feminine framework? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring these conversations with me, make sure you subscribe and leave a like, because we have a lot more to uncover. See you in the next one.